So now today we will discuss about the approach and management of a case of DDH. Next. So DDH, as we all know, is one of the very common pediatric orthopedic condition which we come across. And DDH is a syndrome actually where the problem actually evolves over time. So initially when a child is born, the femoral head is usually inside the acetabulum. But if you come across a child when the femoral head is outside the acetabulum, then your diagnosis is different. Then it is called as teratologic dislocation. And the conditions for teratologic dislocation are different from the idiopathic variety. Idiopathic variety is the most commonly encountered, while the causes for teratologic most commonly are AMC, or it may be some spina bifida. Okay, these are the two important causes. So we are not talking about the teratologic dislocation. We are basically talking about a DDH which has no other associated cause. So the condition usually evolves. So what happens is when a child grows for say first 3 to 6 months, even up to 6 months the femoral head might be inside the acetabulum, while after 6 months it will dislocate. Okay, so that usually the tests of dislocation and relocation, that is called as Barlow test and the Ortolani test, they usually are positive not beyond say 3 to 4 months of age. But in a rarer child they may be possible up to 6 months of age, but they are absolutely not possible after 6 months of age. Ortolani and Barlow, when a child is smaller, he is less than 3 months of age. You should remember this. Now, this is one extreme, that there is frank dislocation. In the middle part of the DDH are those children where there is never a dislocation, and the child will present to you in the adolescent, usually 12 to 15 years of age, with pain in the hip joint. And then you come across, you do an X-ray of the hip, you will see, oh, he is having a dysplasia of the hip. So that means the acetabulum is shallow. It may be a little bit of subluxation, but there is never dislocation. So there are three presentations. One is an infant, where hip is completely normal. Otherwise it is taken out by some test. On the other spectrum is the completely dislocated variety, and in the middle is a dysplastic hip. Okay. So initially the term was CDH, congenital hip dislocation, but the proper term nowadays is DDH, that is developmental dysplasia of the hip. Now what are the goals of surgical treatment? Usually a child in Indian scenario, in our scenario, comes to us after infancy, when the child starts walking. In last 4 years here, I have not seen a child, hardly seen a child, 2 or 3, not more than 2 or 3, who has presented to me within one month after birth. Neither the pediatrician nor the obstetrician has sent me a single child to assess the hip joint. Okay. While in the Western countries, in developed countries like in Europe, in some countries, the neonatal screening for DDH is a universal policy. That means each and every child who is born will mandatorily have to go for a screening by an orthopedic surgeon or somebody who is skilled in doing a clinical examination or ultrasonological examination. But this possibility, this thing is not possible in our scenario. Of course, you know the reasons why. So when the child comes to you, most commonly we do surgical management. And now what are the goals of surgical treatment? The goals are, first, obtaining a stable and concentric reduction. Second, whatever you do, you have to limit the risk of AVN of the femoral capital epiphysis. And as far as possible, the need for secondary procedure should be minimized. Okay, next. Now, how Indian scenario is different? Indian scenario is different, so you can see here and here. So there is no clinical examination of newborn. Obstetricians, they are not trained in examining a hip. Pediatricians also 95% of the times they are not trained in examination of the hip. And for some reason or the other, they usually do not send the patient to the orthopedic surgeon because it is unlike CTEV where deformity is too obvious. The moment the foot comes from the uterus of the mother, the obstetrician will call you. Doctor, there is some problem. Okay. But this is not true in case of DDH because there is nothing visible outside. So this is the problem with DDH. So no USG examination. So USG of the hip in a neonate to diagnose DDH is a very exacting technique. I am not saying technically demanding, but it is an exacting technique, and the radiologist should be trained to look for different signs. Now usually they present in walking age. Usually it is a grandmother of the child who present with that doctor, the child is having limping. Now there is one more important thing, that is different hip morphology. The hip morphology of Indian children, what I have observed is different from the American or the European children. Because even after doing everything, the hip is not that stable as when I was in US and they were doing examination, there was no spica, he was showing, see, I have done a operative procedure and there is no dislocation. And of course there was no dislocation. And when I am operating here, then I am always fearful that it should not redislocate before it goes into ward. So there is definitely something in the morphology of the hip that it is different in Indian children. And there is lack of long-term studies from Indian orthopedic surgeons literature. Next. Now how will you diagnose a case? So as I already said, the walking age is the age group, weight, rope group. Diagnosis of DDH in a walking age child. So when you look for inspection, there will be asymmetry in the skin folds in the thigh or in the groin. If the child have already started walking, then there will be definite limp, and the limp will be unilateral, and it is very difficult to diagnose when the child is having bilateral limp. So that's why the bilateral DDH usually comes a little later than a unilateral case, because the parents and the caregiver think that it is a normal walking child, but it is not so. Now there is a positive Galeazzi sign. So this is Galeazzi sign. So what happens is you just ask the patient to lay supine on the examination table, and you keep the heel at the same level and ask the child to flex the hip. The involved extremity, the knee will be slightly lower than the opposite side. So Galeazzi sign may be present. Limited abduction, very important finding. So when you look for abduction bilaterally, so you compare always from the opposite side, there may be limitation of abduction. There may be limp if it is unilateral, and if the child is slightly older and he or she may be able to take your instructions carefully, then there may be positive Trendelenburg sign. Now hyperlordosis, mind you, this is very important. Bilateral DDH, very important finding is hyperlordosis. So there will be waddling type of gait, and on careful examination there will be limitation of abduction bilaterally, and if you look the lordosis of the lumbar spine, there will be hyperlordosis. So waddling gait, limping which is suspicious, waddling gait and hyperlordosis goes towards the diagnosis of bilateral DDH. Next. Now neonates. So we should also talk about the neonate. So neonate, if you are lucky enough that some pediatrician or obstetrician is suspecting that okay, we may be dealing with a case of DDH, and you should always tell your pediatrician or obstetrician friends that if a child who is a female is delivered with a breech delivery, at least that child should be sent to the orthopedic clinic to rule out DDH. female plus breech. Okay. So the hip usually, as I said already, up to 3 to 4 months of age, it is dislocatable and it is reducible. So you are aware of both these tests, that is Barlow test and the Otto-Lenny test, where we try to dislocate gently and then we try to relocate it. Okay. So in Barlow test we just dislocate it, while in the Otto-Lenny test we do the opposite, we relocate it. That's it. Another important sign is the Kleisig sign. So what happens is, in the Kleisig sign, it is very important in a bilateral case. So if you put your index finger over the tip of the greater trochanter and your thumb over the ASIS, and if you draw a line connecting both the fingers, then it should cross the umbilicus. And if it is crossing below the umbilicus, that means trochanter is overriding, and then it is suggestive that it is probably I am dealing with a case of DDH. It is important finding in bilateral case. Next, infant. What are the findings? So if you are lucky enough and if the child comes to you within 5 or 6 months of age, the findings of dislocation and relocation may be possible. Of course, there will be decreed abduction. Galeazzi sign will be possible, positive if it is unilateral. And you should always ask these things. If there is any family history of DDH, if there is breech delivery, breech presentation, if the child was having, when he was in the uterus, in utero, there was any oligohydramnios. And two important conditions are very commonly associated. It is also an MCQ. And one is torticollis and another is metatarsus adductus. So torticollis and metatarsus adductus, they are important co-conditions in a case of DDH. Okay. Next. Now coming to X-ray. So when you are almost sure that probably clinically I am dealing with a case of DDL, only one thing which is required is an X-ray. But mind you, X-ray is not very important or useful under 6 months of age, because the capital femoral epiphysis usually starts appearing after 6 months of age. Before that, it is, it is cartilaginous completely. So you have to rely on certain lines, and there are 3-4 important lines which all of you must remember. First is the horizontal line, that is called as the Hill-Gendry-Nurse line. So in Hill-Gendry-Nurse line, what happens is, it is a horizontal line connecting both the triradiate cartilages. Okay. And if you draw another line perpendicular to this horizontal line, a vertical line, through the outer margin of the acetabulum, this vertical line is called as the Perkins line. So these two lines divide the acetabulum into 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the capital femoral epiphysis, or if the child is under 6 months of age, the medial femoral beak, it should always be inside this quadrant. That is inferior and medial quadrant. So it is a clue that my hip is inside the acetabulum. And if it is otherwise in any other quadrant, then that means it is dislocated. Now what are the other things? Other is the Shenton's line. All of you are aware that medial femoral shaft cortex, then calcar, then lesser trochanter and the inferior margin of the superior pubic rami. That is obturator foramen. They form a Shenton's line. If there is a break in this line, you suspect this problem. Now another important measurement which you should do in every child is the acetabular index. Now what is acetabular index? So what you do, you draw a line. So first you draw the horizontal line, Hill-Gendry-Nurse line, across both the triradiate cartilage, and from the margin of the acetabulum you draw another line. So the angle between these two lines is the acetabular index, or AI. So acetabular index they say is 27 or 28 degree in a newborn, and it usually decreases to 23 degrees in 6 months of age. Okay, and anything beyond 30 degrees you should always be suspicious. Okay, now next. Now once you have clinically examined the child, you have taken the x-rays of the child, now you have to decide that what I am going to do, whether I am going to treat this child conservatively or I am going to treat this child operatively. Now before doing any intervention in orthopedics or surgical sciences, you must be aware of the outcome measures, that what are my aims and objectives for doing a certain surgery. Suppose I want to do plating in a Galeazzi fracture like he did that day. So what are my objectives? My objective is that there should be a solid union, nice union. The implant should be stable enough so that physiotherapy can be initiated as soon as possible, and there should not be any immediate or late complication. These are my outcome measures when I am trying to operate any case, whatever. I am fixing a scaphoid, I am doing brachial plexus, I am doing TKR, THR, whatever. So what are the outcome measures when you are treating a case of DDH? So there are 3 domains. First is clinical function. So whatever you do, but hip is stiff and painful, but on X-ray it is very beautiful, bad result. So clinically the hip should be stable and it should be painless. This should be your objective. Then radiographic signs are there that I will talk, and then you will have to look whether there is any development of AVN or not. Next. Now the first thing, that is functional assessment. So there are McKay criteria, and they start from grade 1, that is excellent, to grade 4, poor. Okay. So depending upon the stability and pain they have divided, so you have to subcategorize your result into one of the McKay criteria. That is important. Next. Now the severity of osteonecrosis. One of the most dreaded complication of DDH surgery is development of osteonecrosis, and the other of course is redislocation. So osteonecrosis, most of the times it is a iatrogenic complication. It is not that it happens only after operative intervention. It very commonly happens after conservative management also. It has disastrous implications, can be difficult to diagnose because the radiological signs are delayed for about 1 to 2 years in this condition. And when the capital femoral epiphysis has not yet appeared, then it is more difficult to diagnose. So what happens is, if the AVN is involving only the patchy areas, it may improve or it may not show any symptom. You may just ignore it. Watchful negligence, that is called as. Otherwise it may worsen. Okay, next. So Salter had given certain criteria for appropriately diagnosing AVN. So like the femoral head usually reappears, or it appears, not reappears, it appears once you have relocated inside the acetabulum. Okay. So even after 1 or 1.5 years after surgery, you are seeing that there is still no capital femoral epiphysis. You should be warned that probably I am dealing with a case of AVN. Then broadening of the femoral neck, increased density, a very common sign, and fragmentation. Of course, on these two only we diagnose AVN. And residual deformity after ossification is complete. Okay, that we very commonly see in Perthes, that is mushrooming or some other findings. Next. So McKay were the clinical criteria, Severance are the radiological criteria. Okay, so Severance grade 1 to 6. So from normal to redislocation. And center edge angle, they have taken center edge angle as one of the criteria. So what is center edge angle? It is nothing but you draw the Perkins line, you take the center of the femoral head and across the femoral head you have to draw a line crossing the Perkins line. So that angle is called as the center edge angle. Okay. So center edge angle, if it is more than 15 or 20 degree, that means it is the femoral head is more medialized. It is more inside the acetabulum. While if it is more lateralized or subluxating, the angle will be lesser. Okay. So depending upon these conditions, there are Severan's grading. So whenever we write in OPD the follow-up of the patient, we should always write McKay grading, Severan's grading, and whether there is any avian or not. So these three things should always be mentioned. Next. Now radiographic hip congruency. You should always assess your X-ray that my hip is congruent or not congruent. A hip on a cursory look looks okay inside the acetabulum, may not be inside the acetabulum. It may be an incongruent reduction. That's why in trauma scenario, whenever an adult patient comes to you with hip dislocation, you should always go for a CT scan. Why, Watson? You can pause. So in cases of hip joint, so you should always look whether the hip is congruent or not. Now, how will you look? So there should be gradual improvement in AI, that is acetabular index. So every 6 monthly, if you measure the AI, it should be improving. Because what happens is the acetabulum, which was not getting any influence from the femoral head, actually it is both are supporting each other. So the growth of the femoral head depends upon the acetabulum. If it is outside, there will be gradual coxa valga. And the growth of the acetabulum depends upon the femoral head if it is inside. If it is not inside, it will go into shallowing. So both depend upon each other for their growth. So if your hip is nicely reduced inside the acetabulum, the acetabular index will keep on decreasing. Okay. Now the next point is you have to look for the teardrop. Okay, this is a teardrop, and teardrop is very important. So I think you must have been told about the importance of teardrop in acetabular fractures. Okay, so the lateral boundary of the teardrop is formed by the medial wall of the acetabulum. So if acetabulum is not developing nicely, the teardrop will be broader. So as you do serial X-rays, there will be narrowing of the teardrop. Okay, so you should look for it. And Shenton's line, of course, should be intact. Next. Now you have done the clinical examination, radiological assessment, you have known the outcome. Now how will you treat the patient? So treatment of the DDH, you should always remember, depends upon the age of the patient, age of the child. So you can see here that if the child is in infancy under 12 months of age, what suffices is only a close reduction and a spica casting. But as the child is increasing in age, then the operative intervention is more required. So that maybe up to say 1.5 years of age. So this is the time period when most of our cases arrive to us, they come to us. So up to 1.5 years of age, or maybe say 2 years of age, you can just get away only by open reduction plus soft tissue release. You may not need any femoral or a acetabular procedure. While after 2 years, you will require one of these, maybe both of these. And if the child is more than 3 years of age, of course you will require open reduction, femoral procedure plus acetabular procedure. All three will be required. Okay. Next. Now we will talk about the close reduction. Close reduction is possible usually up to only 1 year of age and sometimes up to 1.5 years of age, but rarely. Now there are some schools of thought which say that there is a role of pre-operative traction, but some studies they favor and there some studies they do not favor. But at our institute we do not apply a pre-operative traction. Adductor tenotomy, mind you, is very important. So even if you are able to achieve reduction without adductor tenotomy, but adductor tenotomy increases your safe range. That means you require lesser abduction to keep the hip located inside the acetabulum. So whenever you are doing close reduction, which all of you can do in your private practice or whatever you do, even if you are not in a pediatric surgeon, so you should always do adductor tenotomy first and then you should attempt close reduction of the femoral head. Of course, GA will be required, complete relaxation, muscular. So you have to give traction in the line of flexion and then abduction, and you should give a little push on the greater trochanter, and then you will feel a clump that it has gone inside, and then you should check on the CR. Now there is definite role of fluoroscopic assessment. So you put a dye inside the joint. Next, you put a dye inside the joint and you should always assess what is the amount of dye pooling on the medial side of the hip joint, and it should always be less than 5 millimeter. This is another MCQ question in your final exam. And what should be the dye pool when you do arthrography of the hip after close reduction? It should be less than 5 millimeter. Then you have to select the most stable position of immobilization, and usually the most stable position is about 90 to 95 degree of flexion and about 40 to 50 degree of abduction. And if you are needing more abduction than this, that is beyond 50 degree, beyond 45 degree, that means you are risking for AVN. More the abduction, more are the chances of AVN, because when you are abducting, the vessel which is supplying the femoral head, it will be compressed at the lip of the acetabulum. That's why abduction should not be overzealous, it should be only whatever is required. And then in that position you should apply spica for 3 months. At 6 weeks you should remove the spica, go for an X-ray, and then again apply spica. Next. Now coming to the open reduction. So a child who is beyond 12 months or maybe most commonly after 1.5 years of age will definitely require open reduction. Now what are the purpose of open reduction? The first is to remove any anatomic impediments to congruence. Like there may be pulvinar. What is pulvinar? It is nothing but all the fibrous tissue inside the acetabulum. That is called as pulvinar. All the pulvinar you have to remove. There may be inverted labrum, okay. There may be hypertrophied psoas tendon. All these factors, they may be impediment to your reduction. So in the open reduction, you remove all these things. Transverse acetabular ligament, another important structure. So usually anterior or medial approaches, they are suggested for doing this open reduction. Medial I am not very conversant, but anterior most commonly we do. Next. So anterior we have to open by the Smith-Peterson interval, that is between the sartorius and the TFL, and then you go inside, you will find rectus femoris. For better exposure, the iliac apophysis is better split, so that all of the abductors of the hip, they can be taken nicely without any bleeding of the outer wall of the pelvis. So once you have made the Smith-Peterson interval, you have cut the sartorius tendon, you have cut the rectus femoris tendon, then you will come across the hip capsule. So what is important is you should go for complete exposure of the capsule, not only from the anterior and the lateral side, but also from the inferior and medial portion. Because if the exposure of the capsule is not adequate, then your reduction will be very difficult. Okay, you will not be able to assess what is inside the acetabulum. So then the obstacles to reduction should be removed, incised or lengthened. And if you feel that I need some more bony procedure like femoral or acetabulum, then you have to do that. Once you have done everything, then you do nice capsulorrhaphy and then spica cast 7 for 3 months. Next. Now coming to osteotomies. So osteotomies, they may be pelvic or they may be femoral, and usually they are required beyond 18 months to 3 years or beyond 3 years. So the role of osteotomies is that it may aid in reduction. When the reduction is very difficult, it may aid you, and if the reduction was congruent but it is not stable enough so that it is not in the safer zone, then you can increase the safer zone by adding some pelvic procedure. And in children aged more than 3 years, both may be required. Next. Now coming to femoral osteotomy. So femoral osteotomy, the important role is that sometimes what happens is that you may be able to reduce the hip, but the reduction is very difficult. Okay. So in those cases, when you feel that hip can be reduced but reduction is difficult, so you should always keep in your mind that if reduction is too difficult, then that means there will be too much contact pressure between the acetabulum and the femoral head, and this is another risk factor for AVN. To reduce this risk of AVN, you should always do shortening of the femur. Shortening of the femur will aid you in easy reduction, and the chances of AVN will be not negated completely but reduced to definite extent. So it is a very standard lateral approach, and then you have to carefully evaluate how much amount of shortening is required. Next. Now it is not that only shortening is required. Sometimes if you feel that I may improve on the stability of the hip, you may have to add derotation of the femoral head, or you may have to do some virilization of the femoral head. Okay. My personal preference is never to do varus of the femur. I only do shortening and a little bit of correction of anteversion. About 10 to 15 degree of anteversion I correct, and then I put a plate and put the hip inside. Next. Now this is a very interesting article. They say that what are the predictors for secondary procedures in walking DTH. So the authors say that open reduction without concurrent femoral osteotomy strongly predicted the need for a secondary procedure. So that means these authors propose that even if your reduction is easy and everything is easy, but still I would say this paper suggests that you should add femoral osteotomy so that the chances of further surgery can be reduced, because more the number of surgeries, worse the outcome. Next. Same in this paper also. Next. Now coming to pelvic osteotomy. So basically there are 3 types of pelvic osteotomies. First is the redirectional osteotomy, that is Salter or triple. Triple is nominate. Then another type of osteotomy is the volume reducing osteotomy. So the most commonly done procedure in volume reducing is the Degas and the Pemberton. And there are some salvage osteotomies. One is Chiari and another is Shelf. Chiari is not very commonly done nowadays, but Shelf has definitely some role. Next. Now, what are the important points to remember when you are trying to do pelvic osteotomy or you think that it is necessary? The first point is hip must be well reduced. Never ever try to do pelvic osteotomy without reducing the hip. You may be in trouble. What happens is, if you are doing this Dega or the Pemberton, so they are volume reducing osteotomies. So if hip is not already relocated and you do osteotomy, you may never be able to put inside the femoral head. So that's why we make sure that hip is well reduced inside. Femoral osteotomy has already been finished, plate has been applied, hip is reduced. Now only I start the pelvic procedure. Never try to attempt pelvic osteotomy keeping the femoral head outside. You will be in trouble. So the purpose of course is to enhance the stability of open reduction. And it is said and papers have proven that the pelvic osteotomy, it causes quicker and better improvement in acetabular index. Next. Now the Salter procedure. Salter is relatively easier procedure. But the problem is that you have to denude the both side of the innominate bone, the outer as well as inner. So what you do, you have to reach the sciatic notch. You put a curved artery forceps inside the sciatic notch and you pass a giggly saw through that and you just take a straight cut. And the cut should come out at the AIIS, antero-inferior iliac spine. Okay. Cut starts from the sciatic notch, goes up to AIIS, and you just take a patella holding clamp or a towel clip, catch hold of the innominate bone and just rotate it, and the hinge will be at the pubic symphysis. So that's why Salter osteotomy is always done when the pubic symphysis is not fused. It is supple. That's why it is done in younger children. And then whatever amount of coverage you require, you just insert a tricortical iliac crest graft. It can be taken from the same or it may be a allograft also. The important disadvantages of this osteotomy is that it is sometimes risky, because you know there is one important branch of the inferior gluteal artery which passes through the sciatic notch, and there may be torrential bleed which you may not be able to control. In acetabular fracture surgery also and here also. So you should be careful about this complication, and you should be careful and you should always put some internal fixation. Otherwise your osteotomy may be unstable. So internal fixation, both columns, both the tables of the ileum should be exposed, and there is risk of injury in the sciatic notch. So these are the disadvantages of Salter osteotomy. But Salter innominate osteotomy is the gold standard in this. Okay. So whenever we compare our result, we do some new procedure like Degas osteotomy or Pemberton osteotomy or say San Diego osteotomy, we always take Salter as the benchmark. Okay, like in hip replacement surgery, the Chanley hip is the benchmark. The Chanley hip, it was a cemented hip, but it has given result up to 40 years after initial procedure. So all the results they initially were compared with the Chanley procedure, whether they were cemented or uncemented or whatever variety it was. So similarly in DDH surgery, the Salter is the benchmark and it is the gold standard surgery. Next, now what is Pemberton? So in Pemberton what we do, we again have to expose both sides of the innominate bone. Our cut starts from the AIIS and surrounding the acetabulum it goes upward, posteriorly and backward. And then from the middle part of the acetabulum it goes posteriorly and downward. And you have to curve your osteotome so that ultimately it exits posteriorly into the triradiate cartilage. So that means you can see here that the osteotome is going right into the sciatic notch, but you never have to enter the sciatic notch. Don't enter. Otherwise it will not be Pemberton. So don't enter inside the sciatic notch. You have to remain a little bit anterior to the sciatic notch and you have to go inside the horizontal limb of the triradiate cartilage. This is Pemberton. Next. Now what is Degas? The advantage of Degas osteotomy is only you have to expose the outer table of the innominate bone. So the cut of the Degas osteotomy is that it is medially and inferiorly from just above the acetabulum. and it goes towards the triradiate cartilage but never reaches up to the triradiate cartilage. Pemberton reaches up to triradiate but it does not reach. And you have to remember that the posterior most part just before the sciatic notch should never be broken, because if it is broken then it is converted into San Diego, not Salter. Okay, because Salter is a straight osteotomy, these are curved osteotomies. Okay, and then once you have taken down the acetabulum, you can put certain graft depending upon where exactly you want coverage. You want anterior coverage, you have to put the graft anteriorly. If you want a little bit more posterior coverage, so you can, custom made where exactly you have to put the graft. Okay, most of our procedure they are Degas osteotomy, and it is said jokingly that the surgeon may not always know where my osteotomy is going. You may sometimes enter the horizontal limb of the triradiate cartilage, you may not enter. So they have come with a new term that is called as Pemberga osteotomy. That is, it is a combination of Pemberton and Degas osteotomy. Next. So what is our approach? So this is one of our case. You can see on the left side there is frank dislocation. The child is 2 years, male. There is 39 degree of acetabular index. The broken sentence line is evident. Next. So we take that Smith-Peterson approach to the hip joint. That is the iliofemoral approach. Next. So you have to take care that you have identified the nerve carefully, that is lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh. Then you have to detach the sartorius as well as rectus femoris from your attachments. Then next, yeah, this is important. Knocking down the tendon of the iliopsoas is, I will say, the key point of surgery of BTH, and it usually comes with experience, because unless you cut the iliopsoas or just take down its lateral portion, your retractor may not be able to completely retract the iliopsoas medially, and you may not be able to achieve perfect reduction. So that's why the cutting down of iliopsoas tendon, or at least knocking it down, is very important. Okay, so that's what we are doing. We are taking with a 90 degree artery forceps the iliopsoas tendon, and we are just going to cut it. Next. So now our capsule is fully visible. Next. So now you have to give a T-shaped incision into the capsule, and then you have to reduce it. So this is the reduction intraoperative check radiograph. Next. Now this is the preparation for pelvic osteotomy. So you can see that before pelvic osteotomy, my femoral head is inside the acetabulum. Okay. Then you have to make sure that your one of the Hohmann is inside the sciatic notch. So this Hohmann is inside the sciatic notch. Next. So we have certain special instruments in our OT for this purpose only. We have fine osteotomes, all of you are aware, I think. We have this lamina spreader which we have modified for this. So your first osteotome should start from here, and it should go right up to the triradiate cartilage but not inside it. Next. So you have to make sure that whole of the just above superior to the acetabulum you have cut, and then you have to open your osteotomy with this lamina spreader. Next. This is opening. This is opening. One previous. Next. Yeah. So here you can see that it has nicely gone down. Okay. And now your acetabular index has improved. Next. This is another the graphical representation. Next. Okay. So what is the maximum age up to you can reduce the hip? So there is no consensus on the upper age limit for open reduction. A correlation between increasing age and poor results is obviously there, because as the child grows, the stimulus of the femoral head to the acetabulum is not there. So earlier surgery or earlier close reduction is always better for a long life, good hip. And you should remember one more thing. CTV is always CTV whatever you do. You can never give a normal foot to a child. You can correct it by Ponseti, you can do surgery, but this foot always will be a club foot, whatever life, and it will give complication either in adult life or maybe in older age. But DDH is never DDH if it has reduced nicely. If you have done a nice procedure, you can guarantee a lifelong, stable, painless hip. So after 10 years, if you do X-ray, you may not get any sign that this child had DDH. So this is the importance of early treatment. So in our practice, in our institution practice, we do not attempt open reduction beyond 6 years of age. Maybe up to 6.5 years I have not tried, and once we have tried, we have failed. But strangely enough, when I was in my fellowship, one of my Chinese friend, he came from China, I think. So he said that he can reduce even up to 10 years of age. But you know, how can you believe Chinese? But he showed me some X-rays and he showed me clinical pictures. See Dr. Saab, I have, this was the child, this is 9 years of age, I have done bilateral open reduction. I was amused. Then I said, okay, I will try sometime. Next, what are the salvage procedures? So sometimes you may require salvage in conditions like a persistently subluxated hip in an older child. So here comes the role of the shelf arthroplasty, shelf acetabuloplasty. Next. So here is a patient who came to me. He was initially, I think this is a female, 6-year female. So initially, I think at 2 or 3 years of age, this child was operated in Safdarjung Hospital with Salters. So you can see this is Salters. It was internally fixed by K-wires, by pins. So you can see that here there is lateral uncoverage and the acetabular index is not good. Next. So here we have done a shelf procedure. Next. So this is a shelf we have put. And so far, I think 1 year follow-up, this child is doing good. So this is the further follow-up. Next. Yeah. Now there is one more scenario. So this is actually not DDH as such, but here is the infantile septic hip sequelae, one of the example. This also you come across many a times when the hip is slightly subluxated and you know there is abductor lurching, there is shortening. So one of the salvage procedure which we do frequently, and we find we are going to publish this also with Dr. Nagaraj in Praga. So what you can do is to improve the abductor lurch, you can do a little bit distalization of the abductors. So it will improve the abductor lurch, and at the same time you can do lengthening of the femur. Next. So this we have lengthened with a simple monorail external fixator, and this child is having, this was I think a 12-year-old female. So this is, there is no more abductor lurch. The femur has almost equalized and she is pain-free and without any limping. Next. So this is our experience. We have operated about 33 hips in 28 children in last 4 years. Females are more common in a ratio of 1:5. In 5 hips we have done only spica casting, 4 we have done only open reduction, and maximum we have done 24 hips open reduction plus pelvic plus minus femoral osteotomy. And there are 3 cases of redislocation which very soon we are going to publish. And in one case I was unable to reduce, so we came without reducing. That's it.